It might be an odd thing to admit, to confess. It might be an odd thing to say on a YouTube video, but I have never been to a strip club. The closest I got was a works leaving do that I would probably have gone along to, except it was my PhD Viva that day. But if you have ever been to a strip club, you might ask yourself, were you turned on and why? Now, if that sounds like a stupid question, I agree with you. But a few years ago, there was a court case that ruled that the distance that a dancer stays away from the client that she's dancing for didn't make any difference to the business, to the strip club business, and therefore did not infringe on the freedom of expression of the strip club owner. A group of scientists led by Daniel Lintz decided to test this. So what they did was a field experiment. Now, a classic lab experiment involves a scientist studying two situations that are identical except for one change. And they study the outcomes of the two situations, and any difference in the outcomes that they observe is assumed to be caused by that one change, and that's basically the scientific method. A field experiment is the same thing out and about. So you go out of the lab and into the field. It's sometimes called a field study. And the reason it would be called a field study is because there is less control. So the two situations that the scientist studies in the field are less controlled than they would be in the lab. Now, in actual fact, there is far less control in a social science lab than there would be in, say, a physics lab. So the two situations with the one change in a social science lab would usually not really involve one change, because the research participants will have different backgrounds, they'll have different experiences, they will not be identical. So if you ask two people to undergo the same situation with one slight change, there are a bunch of other things that are different about the two people. And what usually happens is the experiment is repeated with a lot of participants, and then after the data are collected, sophisticated statistical techniques are used to set up the controls behind the scenes. Now, we might talk about that someday, but today we are talking about this field experiment which took place in a strip club. And the experimenters, the scientists, did two experiments. Now, the first varied the amount of distance that the stripper kept between her and the client, and the second varied the amount of clothes that she ended up wearing. So let's talk about the first experiment. So what they did was two dances, one where the stripper was close and one where the stripper was a bit further away. And then after the event, after the dance, the men, the clients, were asked to fill in a questionnaire about how turned on they were by the experience. Now, the experimenters did this with 24 research participants, so in other words, 24 men. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but it really depends on the size of the effect that you're looking for. So if you're looking for a big impact, then you don't need just as many participants than you do if you're looking for a small impact. And what they found was the distance that the stripper kept from the man did have an impact. The closer she was, the bigger the impact. And this was used to challenge the ruling of the court. And there you have it. Social science in the field, even if the field is a strip club. If you like these videos, subscribe down here somewhere, and I'll see you again.